Hey there, ready for a deep dive. We're tackling fascism today, but from a totally new angle, and honestly, this essay, it's a total mind bender, but stick with us, all right?
Yeah, it really flips the script on how we usually think about it, you
Yeah.
know? Instead of some, like, fixed ideology, the author's saying it's more like how societies react to threats.
They get a knee-jerk reaction, almost. But hold on, let's back up for a sec. They keep saying immune response, but what's that even mean when we're talking about, like, entire societies?
Okay, so think about it this way. Your body, right, it gets attacked by, let's say, a virus. It doesn't just kind of sit there. It jumps into defense mode.
Yeah.
Fever, inflammation, the whole 9 yards.
Right, gotta fight it off.
Exactly. And the author's suggesting that societies kind of do the same thing when their core values, the stuff they're built on, when that feels threatened. Fascism, in their view, it's just one way this can play out.
Okay, so like instead of a biological response, it's more of a political response. But like our bodies sometimes go overboard, right? Like with that cytokine storm thing.
Yeah, when your immune system basically goes haywire.
Right. So could societies overreact too? And is that where fascism comes in?
That's exactly what the essay is getting at. And to show this, they dive into, well, history, especially Europe, between the wars, the early 20th century. Think about it. Post-World War I, economies are shot, and then you've got the Bolshevik Revolution shaking things up.
Talk about a recipe for chaos, right?
Totally. And I mean, the rise of communist Russia, that wasn't just some abstract idea anymore. Suddenly it was like right on Europe's doorstep and spreading.
Oh, I bet that added fuel to the fire big time.
Absolutely. Especially for countries like, let's say, Germany and Italy, both dealing with internal problems, plus that fear of a communist takeover. The author argues that fascism, promising things like unity, order, a return to the good old days, it was a seductive alternative, a way to rally everyone against a common enemy.
So it was almost like a fight or flight thing, but on a societal level, and for some, that meant embracing fascism.
Wow.
It's kind of scary how fear and instability can make extreme ideas seem, well, reasonable.
It really makes you think about the power of context.
Yeah.
The essay even suggests that even regimes with like totally opposite ideologies, even they might borrow from fascism when they feel threatened enough.
Wait, really? What? Did they give examples of that? Because that sounds wild.
They do. They talk about Stalinist Russia during World War II. Remember, Stalin staring down Nazi Germany, a very real threat.
Right, talk about high stakes.
Exactly. And so to get the Russian people behind him, the essay says he he embraced certain parts of Russian nationalism and orthodoxy, which is kind of ironic when you think about it.
Because communism is supposed to be atheist and all about internationalism, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So even Stalin, Mr. Communist himself, used tactics that had hints of, what, fascism, even if it was just for a while. That's a bold claim. But do they give any specifics about those tactics?
Oh, they do, yeah. And it's actually pretty fascinating. They focus on, get this, Stalin's propaganda during the war. Like they say, it really hammered on this idea of national unity, traditional Russian values, even religious imagery. Can you believe it?
Wow. Talk about a PR pivot, huh? But it makes you wonder, like, even using those tactics, even for a bit, does it change a regime deep down? Did those echoes of fascism stick around in Soviet Russia after the war was over?
That's a great question. And yeah, the essay digs into that a bit. The author seems to think that fascism, kind of like that immune response we were talking about, it might have an expiration date. Once the big immediate threat's gone, it either fizzles out or ideally, morphs into something a bit more, I don't know, normal.
So say the threat of, I don't know, Bolshevism just kind of disappears. Does that mean a country that had gone full-on fascist just goes back to how it was before? Or is it, like, forever changed by that?
Well, they bring up some really interesting historical examples here. One they talk about is Spain after the war under Franco. Now, Franco, he was definitely authoritarian, no doubt. But the author says that when the communist threat died down, things gradually shifted to a more, well, traditional kind of authoritarianism.
So less like a hardcore fascist, more just, I don't know, run-of-the-mill dictator. Is the author saying that's a win then? Like the best case scenario after society's gone down that road?
It's hard to say, really. But it definitely plays into this idea of fascism as a temporary solution, a Band-Aid on a much deeper wound. And that leads to, honestly, I think the most thought-provoking part of this whole essay. That the things threatening us today, they're different, way more insidious than what caused fascism back then.
Okay, now I'm really curious. If it's not something obvious and external like, I don't know, Bolshevism, then what is it? What's got this author so spooked?
They call them soul and mind threats, which
Mm.
kind of creepy, right? Basically, they're saying that instead of attacking our borders or whatever, these things, they chip away at our values, our sense of who we are from the inside out.
So it's like a slow poison, something that weakens our defenses, makes us vulnerable to like these less tangible threats, right?
That's a perfect way to put it. They're saying rampant individualism, consumerism, the death of real community, it all adds up to this, like spiritual emptiness. And that void, it makes people crave simple answers, strong leaders.
And that's where the danger is, right? When people feel lost, they'll grab onto anything that promises belonging, meaning even if it's ultimately bad for them. But if these soul and mind threats are everywhere, how do we even fight them?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? And honestly, the essay doesn't exactly give us a step-by-step guide or anything, but they do suggest that maybe, just maybe, the answer isn't, fighting fire with fire. Remember, they see fascism as this kind of societal immune response, right? So what if instead of another overreaction, another swing to the extreme, what if the best defense against this new stuff is something, I don't know, more well thought out?
Okay, yeah, I see where you're going with this. So instead of a top-down authoritarian kind of thing, they're thinking more like grassroots, strengthening things from within.
Exactly. Like they talk about building strong communities, bringing back traditional values and spirituality, fostering real human connection. All that, they say, that's what makes a society resilient, less likely to, fall for the siren song of extremism, like boosting our collective immune system, if you will.
So not about hiding away or trying to recreate the past, but actively building a future where those needs, those deep human needs for belonging, purpose, connection, they're met in healthy ways.
Right on. And they make a really interesting point about this. They say this kind of like cultural renewal. It often works best at the local level where people are already connected, by shared values, experiences, all that.
Makes sense. It's like if you want to be healthy, you don't just focus on one part of your body, right? You
Yeah.
got to take care of the whole thing. So instead of waiting for some great leader or big ideology to swoop in and save us, maybe it starts with each of us in our own little corners of the world, taking care of those basic human connections.
Exactly. And the essay, it actually ends on a hopeful note.
Yeah.
They say that even now, with all the craziness in the world, this kind of bottom-up change, it's not just possible, it might be the best way to handle the threats of the 21st century.
Well, that's actually quite optimistic. It's easy to get overwhelmed by how big the problems seem, but this reminds us that we're not powerless. Maybe real strength isn't about walls and power, but about building community, finding purpose, remembering our shared humanity, the things that make us less afraid, less divided.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And I mean, isn't that what makes this whole deep dive thing so interesting? It's not about easy answers. It's about shaking things up, looking at things in new ways, and yeah, maybe ending up with more questions than we started with. The kind of questions that get us thinking, get us talking, and hopefully help us create a better, more resilient future together.
100%. So, to everyone listening, we'll leave you with this. What soul and mind threats do you see in your own life, in your community? And more importantly, how can you be a part of the solution? Think about it, keep exploring, and until next time, happy diving.